Hi, everyone. We wanted to let you know if you're coming in to join us for today's webinar, you're in the right place with Operation Parent and Kyle, the Social Anxiety Ninja. We're going to continue to let folks come into the presentation today. And then in just a few moments, we're going to let you know about a couple of upcoming webinars that we have at Operation Parent. So thanks so much, everybody joining us. It's exciting to see a lot of folks coming in for today's webinar with Operation Parent and Kyle, the Social Anxiety Ninja. So I'll let you know about a couple of our upcoming webinars and programs that we have at Operation Parent. Our next webinar is with Dr. Erin Terada. It is basically how you can support anxious teens in very stressful times. That's coming up very soon on June the 7th, and the registration is currently live. So as we're opening up today's program, if you have a minute to, and you are on your computer, you might want to consider going on over and registering for that webinar if you're interested in the content. It's up on the main page at operationparent.org. We also have a webinar booked for July. Just wanted to let you know, those of you that have been with us on several webinars before. This one, the registration link is not live yet, but it will be very, very soon. So this is with Dr. Crystal Coyer. She's out of Texas, and she's going to work with us on age-appropriate prevention strategies. So if you're interested in that content, maybe you could just jot down a little note on your calendar for July 26th, a live webinar with us here at Operation Parent, and know that the registration link is coming very soon. And if you receive our e-blast, you'll start to receive information about that webinar here very shortly. I'm excited to share with you Operation Parent's mission. We are here to love and support parents by providing real-world information, connection, and most importantly, hope. I want to take you through a couple of technical components to be able to utilize the GoToWebinar system today. If you see the orange arrow at the top, just please click on that now and open up your control panel so you can view the features with me. About midway down, you'll see the questions section. You're going to send both questions and comments in that area. They're going to come privately to Nikki and I, and we will be responding to those throughout the program today. All questions, we're going to do our best to answer all questions by the end of the presentation. Please know that we plan to go an hour and 30 minutes today with the question and answer section. You know, we do understand if you're not able to stay with us that entire time, but remember that you will get the recording tomorrow if you do have to pop off a little bit early. We've got some awesome handouts lined up for you today, as always. One of those was shared with us by Kyle, and it's his three tips for overcoming social anxiety. And then we also have 3 resources that Kyle loved from Erica's Lighthouse, which there's an awesome checklist there for working through social anxiety, general anxiety and depression. It's just some really great handy tips for parents that are helping teens through any type of anxiety. Just double click on those handouts today if you'd like to. We've got them posted here in the GoToWebinar system. If you look under handouts, you're going to see the 4 that I just mentioned, as well as a PDF of today's PowerPoint presentation. So if you are at your computer and you would like to download those now, you can. Just also know that prior to this webinar, we did send out an email to the address that you registered, the email address that you registered for the webinar with, and that also does contain the handouts. So we tried to get you those in a couple of different ways. We are recording this presentation, as I mentioned. The recording is going to be sent 24 hours after the completion of this webinar. For our attendees of the live webinar today, a certificate of attendance will be attached to that follow-up email. The email, which contains the recording link and the certificate of attendance, is going to be sent. Please give us a full 24 hours to get that to you. And also, a shameless plug. If you could please continue to do our survey, or if you're brand new with us today, consider to do the survey. It comes to you directly as we close the webinar. It should take only less than 2 minutes to complete. Your continued support and encouragement, constructive feedback is always well utilized and enjoyed following the close of the presentation. So please continue to take the time to do that. That's one of the ways that you continue to bless us and help us continue to grow our free webinar program. Now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce you to Kyle. We are so excited to have him with us today. He has overcome social anxiety himself, and he is just on a mission to help others work through social anxiety, and he's got a ton of ideas and resources to do just that. He will, your teens, any teen that you know that you're helping with anxiety will gravitate towards Kyle's content, especially his podcast, his brand new YouTube channel, which he's going to talk to you about today. And we couldn't be more pleased to be here with Kyle and thank him for his time and talent in putting this webinar together today. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you, Michelle.
Should we start off with your let's go?
Let's go. All right. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about social anxiety, giving a little bit of my background, kind of the steps that I took and how we can help others, especially teens with social anxiety, as that's my primary focus is for teens, because I want to be that person that I wish I had in high school. So that is my whole goal. As you see here, I'm the founder of Social Anxiety Help. I'm a certified speaker through an organization called NAMI. I'm a teen mental health advocate and speaker. I'm also a TEDx speaker, which has been super cool. It just released, I think, like 5 or 6 days ago, which has been like a goal of mine for like 3, 4, 5 years, just to go from ridden by social anxiety to actually being on one of the biggest stages in the world. Definitely a really cool accomplishment for myself. So it would mean the world to me if you all went and watched that afterwards, and even more importantly, shared it with a teen in your life, as I think just knowing the information is half the battle. I'm also a co-host of a podcast called The Social Ninjas, which is a little bit different than some of the other stuff I do. We focus mainly on mental health of like early entrepreneurs. As any entrepreneurs out there, or anybody who's pursued entrepreneurship, it's definitely a struggle having to build a business, with no money and the stress that comes in with that. So we interview lots of high-level entrepreneurs, also some low-level ones. And when I say low-level, I mean people who are just early and getting started with it. So it's very helpful for you or anybody that you know that is pursuing that. And yes, lots of good tips and stuff in there. And also, going back to YouTube, I just released my new YouTube channel about a month ago. And this is geared specifically towards teens. It's not your typical YouTube channel, and I say that meaning like I don't do videos on, 5 tips on how to approach a girl with anxiety. I don't do that type of stuff. While there's lots of good content that does do that, I do it a little bit differently. So I find stuff on the internet through Reddit or just people that I come across, and I'll basically do commentating on the different content that I find about mental health, whether it's like really good content or stuff that's harmful. I put it in the category as like edutainment, because it's very entertaining, it's funny, or at least to me it is, and it's also very educational. I like to sprinkle in tips, and I think that's a good mixture to have, especially with teens who, they spend enough time in school all day, they don't want to sit and learn any more extra. This is a good way to kind of blend those two things. Okay, and so what we're going to learn today is, what is the purpose of social anxiety and just general anxiety, because I think a lot of people kind of misconstrue like what that is and what its purpose, or maybe don't even know that it even has a purpose. And I'm also going to talk about the 3-step process that I took to go from socially anxious to socially confident, that I've also helped thousands of others do at this point as well. And then almost probably most importantly, I'm going to share with you all how to support one another, especially supporting teens, because I know that's somewhat of a difficult task to do. It's hard sometimes to approach a teen and you want to help, but it feels like you can't get through to them. I've given a few tips on what you can do to, support teens in a way that's actually helpful towards them and doesn't make them feel hostile towards you. So before we get into the thick of it, I just wanted to share just a little bit about me. This picture on the left is me and my wife, and this waterfall that we found that was really cool on this trail in Tennessee. And then also to the right there is my 3 kids, the 2 oldest being girls 8 and 6, and then my youngest son, who is 3 right now. Actually, he's about to turn 4, and they are amazing. I don't even know what to say about it. Like, they just make me smile and laugh every day. My son calls this my happy face shirt. As you can see, it has little smiley faces, and that's what he calls happy faces. So. Okay, and I just want to share with y'all, like I said, before I get too much into it, a little bit background on me and my experience with social anxiety, so I can show you like what exactly I went through. So at the beginning of my sophomore year in high school, I had to transfer schools from like this really small private school to this very large public school. So to give like a little bit of context there, in that small private school that I went to, in the whole high school, it had 200 students in it. And then I transferred to this public school that had about 1,600 students in it. And so obviously this is quite the culture shock for pretty much anybody, especially if you have social anxiety, especially for me, because I'm struggling with social anxiety. I've never been to a public school. I've never had to not wear uniforms to a school. Riding the bus for the first time was a big deal for me. So I had to go through a lot of firsts along with everything else that I had to go through. And I quickly realized that at this new school, the bus would drop me off 40 minutes before my first class even started. Now, I didn't know what to do for 40 minutes. Personally, I wanted to just go, sit in the corner and be by myself, and I would have been fine doing that. I had no problem being alone. But I feared people would negatively judge me, wondering, who's that loser over there with no friends? So I knew I had to come up with a plan, and I did. So my plan was to just walk the halls in circles over and over again until that first bell rang and I could just go to class. And, I thought to myself, this will work great. I'm just going to be able to blend in with everybody because the school is basically like an airport. No one's ever going to pay attention to me. There's not going to be any focus on me. This is going to work out great. Until one day it didn't. And I got on the bus to head home from school, and somebody called me out in front of everybody and said, why do you walk the halls in circles every morning? And I remember having this feeling that I think we've all had at least one point in our lives where it just feels like your heart just drops down into your stomach. And I just felt so embarrassed and ashamed and humiliated, honestly. And I knew the next day at school, well, I couldn't do my plane anymore. I couldn't walk the halls. My plane was bust. So from that day forward, I would go to school, I would walk into the bathroom, and I would sit in the stall and I would sit there and I would cry. And I'd have all these thoughts in my head like, Kyle, why can't you do this, man? Why can't you talk to people? Why can't you make friends? Like, why aren't you normal like everybody else is? And that's what led me to my mission to helping 1 million teens go from socially anxious to socially confident. Now, I want to invite you into my 15-year-old head. So picture this. I did not know how to make friends. Now, don't get me wrong, I desperately wanted to make friends. I just didn't know how to go about doing this. And I can even remember sitting up in my bed at night, trying to think of strategies and, how to achieve this task. And I would think to myself, well, maybe I just say hi to somebody. Or no. Maybe I ask to borrow a pencil and that'll get a conversation going. But what if we start talking and they realize I came from a private school? Well, they think I'm a weirdo? Or what if we start talking and they realize I don't have any friends here yet? Well, they think I'm a loser? As you can probably tell, I struggled severely with social anxiety, and having little to no confidence was just a small byproduct of that. There we go. Okay. So I want to ask from you all. So this is what I do in like school assemblies. I use a software where I can poll the students. Sorry, I got something in mind. Okay. Where I can poll the students and they can text anonymously how they are feeling about whatever a question I throw out there. So here's one that I like to use. Do you feel anxious when meeting new people? So you can message in here, I feel very anxious, or, I feel somewhat anxious sometimes, sometimes not, or maybe you've never really had a problem with, feeling anxious about meeting new people. And this is just kind of like something that's been like in your genes almost. You're pretty comfortable doing it. So if you all could just select, which one you feel best relates to you, so we can kind of get a gauge on who we're talking with here.
All right, everybody. So this is Nikki. The poll has been launched. We'll give you guys like 20 more seconds to answer that question. Question is, do you feel anxious when meeting new people? The choices are, I feel very anxious, I feel somewhat anxious, or I never feel anxious, rarely or never. So go ahead and I'll wrap this up in just a couple seconds. Thank you guys for participating. A lot of you guys are answering for us. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And I'll share the results with you all. It looks like 20% of you said, I feel very anxious. 61% said, I feel somewhat anxious, while 19% said, I rarely or never feel anxious. So back to you, Kyle.
Thank you, Nikki. So, even just seeing the results right there, over 80% of you all said you at least feel somewhat anxious, and those are about the same numbers that I get from teens when I speak at schools for the first time. I think last time it was a little bit over 75% feel that way. And I think it's just so helpful to know that. One is to know it yourself that you feel anxious, but just to see that your peers around you feel the same way, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one who feels anxious when meeting new people. And by doing that, it can kind of get the snowball rolling as far as getting conversations started among friends of saying, oh, okay, I feel anxious about that too. And that's where the real money happens, is because to get these teens talking about it amongst themselves is so powerful. So according to the survey, in which I'm not going to read the whole name because it's very long, but feel free to do so yourselves, but 61% of parents thought that their child's social emotional development had been harmed by the pandemic. And I think just seeing the results of not only this poll, but the ones that I've seen in the past, especially from teens, I think that's spot on. I think that's definitely been harmful because of COVID and being away from everybody. And now it's like getting back into the real world of having to be around people and meeting new people. And it's almost like I forgot how to do this type of thing. And that's why we're seeing a lot of anxiety on the rise, especially among teens. So diving back into my 15-year-old brain again, I would go an anxiety overload when it came to public speaking. Now, for most people, public speaking makes them feel a little anxious, a little nervous. But for me, it was on a whole other level. So for example, if I had to give a speech, let's say one of the later classes of the day, I would do nothing that day except for think and worry about that all day long. And when I finally did get to the class where I was supposed to give a speech, a presentation, or whatever, I would sit in my desk and, I'd listen to the teacher, read off the names as to who's to present in what order. And I would think to myself, oh, I hope the fire alarm goes off. Or, oh, I hope the person in front of me talks too long and we won't have time to get to me today. Of course, this rarely ever happened. And eventually my name would be called, in which I would numbly walk up to the front of my class and turn around and see a sea of my classmates' eyes staring at me, expecting something great. And I knew it wasn't about to happen. Clearly, my life was run by fear. So now I want to ask you, or I want to poll you all once again and ask if you've ever felt like you're being negatively judged, or maybe you just feel overly concerned about what others may be thinking of you just based on some ordinary tasks. This could be like, meeting with a student's parents, maybe just knowing that you have to do a presentation yourself in front of some of the other staff, just some sort of like ordinary tasks. I just want to know, how often do you feel this way?
All right, guys. Nikki again. Again, the poll question is, do you ever feel like you are being negatively judged by others or feel over-concerned about what others are thinking when you're doing ordinary tasks? I'm going to give you guys about 15 more seconds to answer. Again, thank you guys so much for participating in these polls. All right, just a couple more seconds. See a couple of you coming in still. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this poll. And I'll share the results with you all. It looks like 15% of you said, that's me all the time. 38% of you said often. 36% of you said sometimes. And 11% of you said rarely. All right, Kyle, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Nikki. So yeah, it looked like over 50%, I think it was, that felt at least a lot of the time they feel overly concerned or feel like they're being, negatively judged, which is essentially the definition of social anxiety, is feeling like you're being negatively judged in social situations. And most of the time that you're not. But, and I meant to say this in the very beginning, but I'll go ahead and say it's better late than never. When I'm going through all this, I'd have no means as to like try and get you to diagnose yourself or me say, you have social anxiety disorder. I like to always make that clear because I know that's can be easy to do, especially for teens, is they'll say, oh man, I feel this all the time. I must have social anxiety disorder. And I mean, maybe you do, maybe you don't. That's not my job to tell you if you do or not. But it is my job to let you know that we all do have a socially anxious part inside of us. So there's like this, I don't know what you want to call it. It's a system. It's called the internal family system, or as I like to call it, parts work. And it's basically you have a bunch of different parts inside yourself. Now you have an anger part, an anxious part, a happy part. And so what a lot of times is, people have a socially anxious part, and sometimes people have that part that it's a lot more active than others. Like for me, it was extremely active. It was the one driving the bus, I like to say. Like if I have a bus full of all my parts, my social anxiety was directing my life and telling me what decisions I could and cannot make. And so it's all about not eliminating the social anxiety, because that's not possible. We all have anxiety. It's going to come up from time to time, and it has a purpose in which we'll get to. But it's about making sure that the full conscious you is behind the wheel of that bus as much as possible, and not one of your other parts, whether that be social anxiety, anger, whatever it may be. And if you look here, according to the NCSAS, 9.1% of teens have social anxiety disorder. So that's almost 1 out of every 10. And according to the ADAA, 36% of those teens wait a decade or more before ever seeking help. This is a different kind of pandemic, and this is why I call my presentation, the silent pandemic that needs a louder voice. And if you look into the ADAA, the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, they'll show you, and they have lots of good resources on there. But if you really want to get more of a feel for like what social anxiety is, especially if that's not a very active part for you, and kind of hearing about it is like, why that doesn't make sense, which is completely normal, because social anxiety from an outside perspective is absolutely irrational, but it's rational in here. And if you see on here, it says that 15 million American adults have social anxiety disorder, and that the average age in which this comes up, or the onset for social anxiety disorder, is during the teenage years, which goes back to why I try to focus so much on teens, is because one, I want to hit them early. I want them to know this information sooner rather than later, because it's easier to manage your anxiety, keep your mental health at an optimal level when you are a lot more proactive with it, when you learn this stuff when you're younger, than as to when you're older and maybe you have some habits that you need to break and whatnot. But if we can move to the next poll, there we go. So just in the past week, so say the past month or year, whatever, just in this past week, how often have you felt anxious? Is it something you felt this for every day this past week, maybe 2 to 3 days, 1 day, or hey, maybe you didn't feel anxious at all this week? You all could just select and let me know.
All right. We'll give you guys about 20 more seconds to answer that. Again, the question is, in the past week, how often have you felt anxious? Every day, 2 to 3 days, 1 day, or I haven't felt anxious all week. So go ahead, I'll give you a little bit more time, as I do see you guys are still answering this poll. All right, I will go ahead and close this poll and then share the results with you all. Looks like 21% said they experience this every day, 40% 2 to 3 days, 28% 1 day, And 11% again with I never feel anxious, or I never felt anxious this week. And thank you guys a lot. This is almost a record-breaking participation rate in the polls, so just really appreciate you all. All right, back to you, Kyle.
Thank you. Yes, yes. And thank you for participating in the poll. The polls, I think, are just so extremely powerful. And I love this one in particular because why I asked this is just to normalize anxiety in general. Because a lot of times it can feel like, oh, I was anxious yesterday, and you might feel bad about it. And I know a lot of teens feel this way. They tell me all the time, like, how do I get rid of anxiety? And it's like, whoa, this is a normal thing. Like, you're allowed to feel anxious. Like in this past week, I've felt anxious, I'd say maybe not every day, but definitely 2 to 3 days. I mean, sometimes we're going to be a little bit more anxious than others, and that is okay. Like, that is 100% okay, 100% normal. So I appreciate you all participating, and hopefully this has helped you as well feel like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one amongst my peers that feels this way. I mean, I think it was almost 90% felt anxious at least one day in this past week. Okay, and so now I want to get into anxiety's purpose, because like I said in the beginning, I think this is one of the things that a lot of people get wrong, especially teens. I hear say stuff like all the time, like, I wish my anxiety would just go away. I hate my anxiety. You know, the anxiety is the worst, and just kind of like these negative aspects towards anxiety. And I get it. I mean, I get it. I don't like feeling anxious a lot of times, or a lot of times anxiety comes up when I don't really need it. But anxiety's purpose is to keep you safe, to keep you protected. Like, it's anxiety does not just come up in our lives just to annoy us. Like, it was not just built in our brains just to be a little, a gnat kind of buzzing around. This is something that is meant to help you. When it comes up, it is here to help you, here to serve you. When it comes up, it thinks that you are in danger, and that's why it's coming up. It's saying, hey, Kyle, get the heck out of here. You need to stay safe. So I want to tell you a little story, because I said something about, when anxiety is needed and when it's not, which may sound odd, but there is times that it's needed and sometimes that it's not. So for example, I was outside with my neighbors, I'd say this is, I don't know, a year or two ago at this point. And, all our kids were kind of all out playing. We have a pretty close-knit neighborhood. And I remember one of the daughters of my neighbor went missing for a second. They couldn't find her. And I remember her mother was, really kind of frantic about it and was like, okay, where is she? I can't find her. And she was kind of going through the motions of kind of losing a child, as you can relate to, or hopefully you can't relate to. And then I remember afterwards, when they did find her, she was over at a friend's house. She was safe. Everything was good. She came up to me and she said, I'm sorry I was acting like that. I was feeling like super anxious. I shouldn't have been like that. And I remember telling her, like, no, like, you should feel anxious in that moment. I would think there was something wrong if you weren't feeling anxious about that, because we need anxiety to come up in moments like that. If I lose my child at the mall, I need to feel anxious about that so I can go out and, look for her. Whereas if I didn't feel anxious about that, I would probably continue just, walking around, shopping, and hope that my 6-year-old meets me at the car type of thing, which is not a good thing. We need anxiety in this moment. But a lot of times, and maybe even most of the times for a lot of us, anxiety comes up in moments when we don't need it. Moments when we are safe, or the people around us are safe and protected. So for example, one of the biggest fears I guess I had, especially, or just throughout my whole school career really, was, raising my hand in class to ask a question. I felt incredibly anxious about doing this. Anxiety would always come up if I wanted to raise my hand, which I never did, But if I wanted to ask a question, I wouldn't, because anxiety was like, no, stay away, that's dangerous. Or if I got called on to answer a question, I would just be overwhelmed with anxiety. But why? I'm safe in this moment. I'm protected. I don't need anxiety in this moment, right? Because like I said, I'm safe, I'm protected, I'm not in any sort of danger. But my brain in that moment thinks that I am. And so it's saying, okay, let me produce some anxiety in Kyle's brain. That way he knows to get the heck out of there because he's in danger and we're trying to help Kyle out. So that's really the difference. And, anxiety when you need it and when you don't need it, but it still comes up a lot of times. And like I said, I think for a lot of us, we have the anxiety that comes up when we are in a safe and protected environment. So you may be wondering to yourself, like, okay, when did Kyle realize he needed to make a change in his life? Because he obviously did something here, right? I'm not just on this webinar. So for me, this happened when I was in college. I can remember walking into the bedroom of my apartment and hearing this voice clear as day inside my head say to me, Kyle, you have got to do something about this, man. Like, you got to take some sort of action. Quit taking pity on yourself and take some action on it. And for whatever reason, that's when it clicked for me. And that's when I realized and kind of accidentally developed this 3-step process that, like I said before, not only I use, but now I've helped thousands of others, teens, use to go from socially anxious to socially confident. So what can you do? Well, let's go through the 3 steps because that is what you can do for yourself. And step 1 being shower yourself with self-love. So according to Cascio, there is MRI evidence suggesting that, certain neural pathways in our brains become expanded when we practice self-affirmation tasks. And if you want to get super specific with it, the ventral medial prefrontal cortex in our brains, which is responsible for things like emotional processing, self-perception, among other things, becomes more active when we take into account our own personal values. And according to Weisenfeld, when we practice these self-affirmations, our tendency to linger on negative experiences actually decreases. So if we can practice self-love to decrease our tendency to linger on negative experiences, then we can assume that we can increase our tendency to linger on positive experiences. And so one way I like to do that is with, self-affirmations. So what I'll do in the morning is I'll go into my bathroom and I'll get my speaker out and I'll sit it on the sink and I'll start playing some music. Now, I don't just play any kind of music. I play music that for me personally is going to get me, hyped up, like get me jive, like really get me emotionally invested into what I'm doing. So if you've ever heard of, or not heard of, if you ever watched let's say a movie with a battle scene in it or some sort of intense scene, if you listen to the music that's going on in the background, it's something like dun 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 dun. It's that music that gets you into the movie. It makes you feel like you're there. You might have like some goosebumps or hairs sticking up on your arm because the music has a funny way of getting like your body emotionally invested into whatever scene that you're watching. And if you pay attention, movies use this very precisely and to kind of like guide your emotions through the movie. And so when I'm listening to this music, I will speak positive self-affirmations via I am statements, and I say it with emotion. And when I'm talking about emotion, so I don't have to, do it here on camera, although I'd be perfectly fine to do so. but I think this video is way better than me doing it. So if you could play the video to see kind of the emotion into what I'm talking about when you're doing these affirmations.
Look, I can be a shark. Now my whole house is great. I can do anything good. I like my school. I like anything. I like my dad. I like my cousins. I like my aunts. I like my Allisons. I like my moms. I like my sisters. I like my dad. I like my hair. I like my haircuts. I like my pajamas. I like my stuff. I like my rooms. I like my whole house. My whole house is great. I can do anything good. Yeah. I can do anything good. Better than anyone. Better than anyone.
All right. So I share that video because, well, that's basically what I look like in the morning. I look like a crazy person, except for I'm not standing on the sink. I'm much too tall to do that. But you can see, like, she's emotionally invested into what she's saying. Like, she believes it. And I think that's the biggest thing that people miss out on self-affirmations, is that they'll go in and they'll go into the mirror and say, you know, I am confident, I'm amazing. And it's like, well, you don't even believe that, so it's hard to really even get your brain into like believing it itself. And one thing I like to say all the time is the difference between a confident person and an unconfident person. The only difference is that the confident person believes that they're confident, while as the unconfident person doesn't believe it. So essentially, you can build confidence within yourself and in your mind by practicing these self-affirmations and kind of unconsciously kind of almost tricking your mind into believing what you are saying. So just some common I am affirmations that you all can use. You know, I am confident, I'm amazing, I am beast, I am worthy. There's also ones, doesn't have to start with I am. Some ones that I say every morning, you know, are I love myself, I bring value everywhere I go. So now, as I like to keep my audience invested into what I'm saying, and I want you all to put this into practice now, because I know how these can be sometimes. We can go on to the next day and kind of forget about it. So I just want you all to share, and I think we're going to do this in the chat box, I believe. But what is one positive self-affirmation you are going to use this week? And if you all could just type that in the chat box, I believe I'll be able to see it when they start coming, but I'll give you a little bit to do so. I am unstoppable. Love it.
Kyle, I also see I am strong. I am reliable. I can do this. I'm good enough. I'm awesome. I'm worthy of praise. I can survive this school year. Amen. I am creative. I am enough. I get this. I bring value. I am awesome.
I love it. Awesome. Okay. Because I couldn't see anything on the chat. So I was like, oh man, everybody tipped off. Okay. Awesome. Glad you all are still participating. I appreciate it. But yeah, just use that affirmation in the mirror. And I know it might feel silly or you might feel kind of stupid doing it, whatever. But I didn't say you have to go do it in front of everybody. I mean, I do this before everyone in my house wakes up. So I'm, you know, I got my music jamming downstairs in the bathroom and I'm just going in on it. And there's not many like tips or like tricks I can tell you that you can feel the result in pretty quickly. but this is one of them. I mean, you can probably feel this probably the first time. I mean, it takes practice, but I mean, do this for a week and tell me you don't feel a little bit better going into the day when you are just really into it. And like I said, emotionally invested into it, like saying it like you believe it. So it's I am confident, not I am confident, because that's your brain's not going to believe that. All right, so thank you for everybody participating. And let's move on to step 2, which is to find a baby step uncomfortable challenge. Now, when I say uncomfortable challenge, what I mean is something that's going to make you feel a little anxious, a little nervous, you know, something's going to take you just a little bit outside that comfort zone, as you can see there. And according to medicalnewstoday.com, 60 to 90% of people have either no symptoms or very mild symptoms after their completion of exposure therapy. So why do I say baby steps? Now I say this because we don't want to do something so big and, you know, so far outside our comfort zone that it actually sends our mental health for a loop and, you know, makes us feel even more anxious than before. We want to do something just enough to where you can feel it. So example I like to give is, you know, imagine a pool filled with anxiety water, you know, something just enough to get your toe wet, like that is it. Because as you can see here, baby steps are still steps in the right direction. And while you might not see the progress or results that you want in a day or two or whatever, do this consistently over time and you can see major, incredible results. So I want to show you all an example of an exposure challenge that I've done, and I've also had other people do as well. Now, I'm going to just throw this disclaimer out here. Just because I did this doesn't mean it's a great challenge for you or a teen in your life. This is just an example of something that can be really small, but it's also kind of creative on how to do it. So hopefully this kind of gets some ideas going, but you can play the video. Up! What's up? All right, here we go. This guy's probably think I'm honking the camera. Hey! Come on, I need some more. What's up? Yeah! Oh! Woo! Yeah! What's up, yellow guy? Okay, so, oh, excuse me. So that's a challenge that for me, it made me feel, you know, just a little bit of anxiety doing it. Was, you know, just waving, having my hand out the window and waving and honking at people that I don't know who they are. I don't know why this won't go. Okay, there we go. Okay, sorry. I think I was having a hard time with full screen. But anyways, that was something that I could do that was, you know, just enough, and to kind of train my brain like, hey, I'm safe in this moment. Like there's no need for anxiety to come out right now. Like I'm protected, I'm safe, I'm not in any danger. You know, as long as I keep my eyes on the road, which I think I did pretty well, but just doing something simple like that. I have a friend who before he gives free hugs around the world. And he says before he does his little free hug events at these public places is he'll just walk down the street and just smile and wave at 10 strangers. You know, doesn't matter what they wave back or that's just to get his warm up going. So it's just like a really good way to, like I said, train your brain to be like, oh, I am safe in this moment. So, and if you've been following along, you probably know what's coming up next. And I want to ask you all, you know, what's one baby step challenge you could and will take this week? So I'll give you a little bit on this one, but it can be helpful to think of like, okay, what's something that maybe you've been working towards or something that maybe makes you a little anxious, but you'd like to be able to do it. you know, and then think, okay, what's a baby step I can take in the direction of that one thing? So if you all just want to put those in the chat, I'd love to see it, although I can't see it. So if Michelle or Nikki, if you want to read those out as they come.
Happy to. Let's put them in the question section. That's working a little bit better in the question section.
In the question section.
Sorry, it's taking a minute to load. There we go. Okay. I can learn 3 names. I can compliment 5 people.
Nice.
I can say no and not feel guilty. I can help someone hold the door open. I can say hello to 3 people I don't know. I can wave to neighbors when I drive by, which I constantly embarrass my teens when I do that. I will help run field day on the last day of school. That's amazing. I'll say hello to more people that I don't know. Yay. Oh, say hello and smile while coming to work. Good way to start the day. Be mindful and breathe. Don't go down the rabbit hole. Nice suggestion. Speak up at my Brene Brown workshop. Great idea. Call a faraway friend for a chat. Say hello to people in my neighborhood when I go for a walk. Say hello to a stranger or 2 or 6 strangers. I like that. Okay, got it. Just say hi to people. Let's see. Since they can't see me while I have my mask on, just say it out loud. I will engage in a conversation with parents at swim lessons. Remember that no is a complete sentence. I'll do something I've been putting off. Amazing. I'll give a genuine compliment to a stranger. I'll invite a new friend over for coffee. Let's see. I think we're just about through. I can be more accepting. I will reach out to one person in a group that I don't know. I'll listen first and then ask questions. Oh, someone says I can give hugs, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Talk to people at upcoming holiday barbecue, buy coffee for someone I don't know, let people know. Let's see, keep saying good morning regardless if they do not say anything back. Arrive 15 minutes before my appointment to get acclimated to my surroundings. Delegate responsibility. I'll say no if I can't handle it. I can make eye contact versus occupy myself with my phone. I can smile and greet people. These are awesome, Kyle.
Yeah, those are all really great.
Well, there was one powerful one at the end, I'm sorry that I missed, and someone said mend offense, which I'm assuming is maybe a broken relationship that they want to work on.
Yeah, those are uncomfortable for sure. I think that is for everyone. At least it is for me. Yeah, those are all really great. I especially like the compliment a stranger one. That was one that I used a lot. Just because it's uncomfortable to do, but you also make the other person feel like really good just by complimenting their shoes or shirt or whatever. So yeah, that's kind of like a double win. All right. So after I came up with steps 1 and 2, this is kind of what led me to come up with step 3, which made the whole process, much easier and more fun. And that is to reward your efforts, not your results. Now, I say efforts and not results because we can always control our effort, right? I mean, we always have the ability to do so, but we can't always control our results, or really can't ever control the results. But a lot of times our brain likes to go in and focus on the results anyways and make us feel bad that, we weren't able to score on that test, or that interview didn't do well. And it's like, okay, but did you put in the effort to go outside your comfort zone? Like, you did do that. That was the hard part. So I want you to give yourself like a pat on the back and treat yourself. So that is what I like to do to kind of help reinforce that in your brain, to focus more on the effort and less on the result, is to really reward yourself for these. So for example, when I first started doing these challenges in college, I would reward myself by playing 1 hour of Xbox before starting on my homework. And this works, really well for me. But you can also, treat yourself with a special coffee from Starbucks, or maybe a lunch date with a friend, or maybe even something as simple as a 20-minute Netflix break in the middle of the day. It's just whatever works for you, however you can, show yourself that you appreciate you for putting in the effort. So now I want to hear from you all. How are you going to honor your efforts in this challenge this week? And you can just put it in the, I think the question box is what we're doing now. And this doesn't have to be like monetary, like you don't have to spend money on yourself type of thing. This can be very simple things. Like I said, taking a 20-minute Netflix break in the middle of the day, which I know can be hard for a lot of people who feel like, oh, I'm not being productive. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I know that's how I am a lot of times. But a lot of times you just have to reward yourself and, find those ways to put in play. And you put in the effort, go reward yourself.
20 minutes of TV. Ask for a pat on the back from my wife. Give myself 2 hours on Saturday to go thrift shopping. Allow myself 30 minutes of video games at night. I'll give myself a treat. I'll go for ice cream. Good idea. 20 minutes of guilt-free daydreaming during the day. Get myself a foo-foo coffee.
There you go.
Take a relaxing walk and appreciate my surroundings. Buy a new outfit. 20 minutes of reading a book just for fun. Make a counseling appointment for Friday. Go for a walk.
Good.
Take myself to Target. Quiet time and work in my garden. Yes. Go on a short trip just because. Get a massage. Go fishing. My husband would second that one. Oh, nice. These are great. Guilt-free breaks for mindfulness during my workday. Guilt-free bird watching. Yay. Gardening, take a walk on the beach. Lucky. Go for goat yoga. Nice.
Go yoga, let's go.
Yes. These are great, right, Kyle?
Yeah,
Okay.
love it.
We got it.
Awesome. And whoever said foo-foo coffee, that is something my mom would say. I've never heard anybody say foo-foo other than her, so I feel like we have a connection. All right, so we move on to this next slide. Here we go. So how can community and schools help? So there's lots of ways to do this. I think a big one is really just checking in with students in a non-invasive way, especially with those that maybe seem isolated, or maybe just they seem like they're not their usual self. Just giving just a friendly check-in, saying, "Hey, Kyle, everything going okay?" And they'll probably say yeah or fine or whatever, because that's just how teens are. But but then you can let them know, like in this next point, that, hey, well, if you ever do need anybody to talk to, just want to let you know, like, I'm always open. My door's open. You can always come talk to me anytime you want, and I'll sit here and listen to you. And so I think that's really helpful. Also, if you do get to the point of they do come to talk to you and they want to share with you, a big thing to do, and I think one of the most common mistakes, is to kind of invalidate their emotions, or say like, "Oh, it's not that bad," or "That sounds in your head." Like, always validate their emotions, because while it may seem irrational to you, or you don't understand it, like I said, social anxiety is pretty irrational from the outside perspective. It's completely rational up here. So even if it sounds like way out of bounds, it is how they're feeling. And I mean, if that's how they say they're feeling, then that's how they're feeling. Also, another thing that community and schools can do is find relatable people to talk to them. So, for example, I mean, I know it's hard for a lot of teens, and really just people in general, to kind of open up to people who are, who they see as kind of like not like them, or they don't know what I'm going through type of thing. And that's why I come into schools. And so sounds like a shameless plug here, but having me come into the school and speaking to the students, and me sharing my my vulnerable part of my story, like I did with you all in the beginning, it helps build that kind of instantaneous connection of like, "Oh, I'm not alone. This guy is going, he went through this stuff just like me, and now he's doing whatever. So maybe there's hope for me." And I think that's just really powerful for teens to have access to. So how can we help, especially with like parents, with their own teens? So it's a lot of the same thing, but there are some differences, as parents have a different relationship with their child than a teacher does a student, or whatnot. But checking in with your child, like we said before, letting them know that you're willing to talk, always validating their emotions. And then a really big one is, don't be too quick to give advice. That's probably the biggest mistake that a lot of parents make, including myself in the past have made, and I'm still working on, because it's a practice, is don't give advice unless they ask for it. A lot of times when they do come up and they want to talk to you, they're looking for support. They're looking for someone to listen, so they can get all this, emotional baggage out from inside them, and just doing that is so helpful for them. And giving them advice when it's not asked for can come off as just kind of negative, or maybe that's not the right word, but it might kind of come off hostile towards you about doing that, of, well, you don't know what I'm going through type of thing. So we want to, avoid that at all possible points. But if you do have a solution and you would like to share it with your teen, a really safe way to do that is just ask them if you can. So before saying it, you can say, "Hey, are you open to hearing a solution for this, or something, or are you open to hearing some advice that I have about this?" And that way they have the opportunity to say, "Yeah, sure." And then if they say that, then okay, you can give that, and they're not going to be upset with you. Or they can say no, and that's fine, and you can go about your day or having the conversation. They may even come back later on and say, "Hey, what was that piece of advice that you were thinking?" So I think this is super helpful, not just dealing with teens, but just in relationships in general. I know this has been super helpful in just, me and my marriage with my wife. Because me and my brain, I'm like, I got to fix this thing, and I know how to fix this, but it's like, she doesn't want to hear that. She just wants someone to, listen to the problem, that she's having. and same for me as well. So now I want to invite you all into my head today, 10 years later. So the number one fear in the world is public speaking. And here I am, speaking in front of all you strangers that I have no idea who you are, but I'm here and I'm doing it. I never thought I would have my own family, and now I'm married and have 3 kids. I never thought I could, be a boss, and now I started and run my own company. And I surely never thought I'd be helping teens go from socially anxious to socially confident. I didn't think any of that was possible because it wasn't. Not until I developed and started practicing my 3-step plan. So my name is Social Anxiety Kyle. Well, it's not my real name, but that's what I go by. I might pick up Social Anxiety Ninja like Michelle said though, because I like that. But my mission is to help 1 million teens go from socially anxious to socially confident. So like I said before, I do school assemblies, I do webinars, and I do in-person, virtual, all that good stuff. Whatever I can do to really help teens with the issue of anxiety and just improving mental health. If you want to check me out, my website's socialanxietykyle.com. I have an Instagram, TikTok, because that's where my teens are, Facebook. You can find me at Social Anxiety Kyle. And like I said before, YouTube channel, go check it out, Social Anxiety Kyle. Just quick disclaimer, the most recent video, probably not safe for work, not because of me and I'm like cursing all over the place or anything, just who I'm kind of talking about. It's about toxic masculinity, so just be advised. And then also just going back to the TEDx talk, like I said, it'd mean the world to me if y'all would go watch it, share it with teens in your life. Huge thing for me personally. So I'm super proud of myself and rewarding myself for that. But yeah, you can find the link there, and I think it'll be, or you guys will get this in the email later. But and then I wanted to share some resources from some organizations, other than myself. Looks like I talked about earlier, the ADAA, the Social Anxiety Brochure, which this is really good. Like I said before, if you're not familiar with what that is and kind of what all that entails, so that'll help you give it a little bit better perspective, especially if you have a teen in your life who is socially anxious. There's also an awesome Bring Change to Mind organization that I just spoke at like a month or so ago. And they have this really cool tool on their website called the Talk Tool. And it basically like has like different scenarios that you can choose from and how you should approach those as far as like how to give support to someone in this scenario. So I think that's really cool. And they do like little 30-second videos on how to do it. Erica's Lighthouse, Language for Parents During Times of Worry. This is just really helpful stuff to know so you aren't accidentally saying things like, oh, you don't need to be worried about that, or, oh, that's just all in your head, just go do this, because that stuff isn't helpful to someone who's worrying. It doesn't make them worry less. So this can help you help your teen. And then for a more like proactive approach, which I am super for, I think we need to be more proactive with mental health in general, is a family action plan. And they have like all these sort of like activities and stuff that you can do with your teens to really be more proactive with mental health and just kind of bond your family or maybe your classroom a little bit more together. And then I know we talked about it before, but the Operation Parent Handbook, I have both of these and they are extremely awesome. It's not just like a booklet of just like, I'm gonna actually like go and read a chapter book type of thing. Like as you can kind of see, like there's graphs and charts, and it's a super easy thing to read and just filled with an enormous amount of great information for parents. So definitely go check that out. All right, and I'm here for any questions. I will provide all the answers I have.
Thank you, Kyle. That was amazing. And we had someone already say in the question section just that. Thank you so much. You are totally amazing. Is what one of our attendees wanted to let you know. So now's the perfect time to input your question in the chat. And for Kyle, we're going to go through just a couple of closing slides here for Operation Parent, and then we'll get right to your questions. I did see someone else just typed in super helpful. Thank you, Kyle, in the question section.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, and thank you so much for just giving props to our handbook. It has definitely been a labor of love over the last 13 years for our founder, Jean Shum. It's really great, I would say, for parents, foster parents, grandparents, or if you work at a school and you're around teens often. There's an elementary version and that middle and high version. It's a very inexpensive purchase for the level of information that you get. That's available for order online right now at operationparent.org/shop. For the many of you that are with us today, we do have a special offer by going to operationparent.org/shop. You do get a discount on your order today if you discount 15, if you put in the coupon code 15 off. So all you have to do is place your order and then put in your special coupon code. And for just spending your valuable time with us today, you will get a special discount. That goes for individual parent handbooks or bulk offers. If you're with, we can tell we've got a lot of drug-free communities, youth and family service representatives, those of you with schools. So if you wanted to place a bulk order and receive that discount, you certainly can. If you've been with us for a while, just know that this offer is super short because of the holiday on Monday. So it will go through Friday, May the 27th. If you haven't had a chance yet and you're interested in the content on how to support anxious teens and developing resilience through very stressful times, you can join us for our next webinar coming up really quickly on June the 7th with Dr. Aaron Terada. And then please join us on our growing and vibrant social media communities, Facebook and Instagram, as well as Twitter. All right, very good. So here's a question for you, Kyle. What would you say to a parent who thinks that their teen has social anxiety, but their teen has no interest in working on the issue?
That's a good question. Yeah, because teens are tricky, like I've kind of been saying. It's kind of hard to like get them invested into it. Unfortunately, I don't know how much you really can do about it other than set a good example yourself and show that, hey, I'm gonna take my mental health a little bit more seriously, maybe doing some practices, or maybe trying to incorporate some practices with them, saying, hey, you know, do you want to, I've never done this before, but you know, I've never tried meditation before, but do you want to try doing some meditation with me? Or maybe just kind of slowly incorporate, almost kind of like sneakily incorporating like gratitude into it. I do this with my kids all the time, although they're not teenagers. So, but just kind of, you know, I'll just say like some things that I'm grateful for, and then they'll just start saying things that they're grateful for. Because it's hard to get them help if they don't want to receive help. And it's far more powerful if they come to it themselves saying, hey, I need help myself, like what can I do? That's when the real magic happens and when they can really experience change. But if you try to like force them into it, you know, there's going to be a lot of pushback on that, I would think. So I would say just being super open, just letting them know that you're down to talk to them, and hopefully sooner rather than later they'll experience like, okay, I need some help with this. But
I love that so much. And like what you're saying too is like, don't ever give up. Like keep trying, be creative, because they are going to be pretty closed off if they've gone through um, trying times with social anxiety. I mean, you tend to be closed off and it's going to take a little while to get in there. And so just don't lose hope. Stick with us at Operation Parent. Keep looking at some resources. Follow what Kyle's doing. One thing we thought is, since it's summertime almost for most of us around the country, that you could either offer to let your teen watch the webinar, because you're going to get the recording tomorrow. So you could see if they ask them first, but see if they're interested in maybe watching this webinar or utilizing the handout that has Kyle's 3 tips on it. It's a really amazing handout, and maybe just giving them some of the resources that you've learned today might help open them up a little bit and get them studying a few things on their own. But keep the faith, keep the hope. You there's always something else you can try if you're not hitting the mark with your teenager. And every teen's different. I know in our own households, if you have more than one child, you know how different each of them are. So keep trying, don't give up. Okay, so my tween struggles to strike up conversations. I've suggested asking other people about themselves, but do you have some creative ways that maybe they could strike up the conversation?
Sure. So, I mean, well, one, I'd be curious to why do they have a problem striking up conversations? I think that would be the first thing I look at, is like, is that like a lack of self-love thing? Is that like, I don't feel like I bring value to these people? Is it, I fear people are going to negatively judge me based on what I'm saying? I think that would be the part I would start at. It's trying to figure that out, why it is. You can ask them in a non-invasive way, like we've been saying, and then we can kind of develop things that you can do to maybe build that, if that's what it is, to build self-love, around that, because that's what I commonly see is like people who have social anxiety tend to not love themselves very much, myself included in the past. But once you start to like build that self-love and be like, I love Kyle, I love my pale skin and my blonde hair, which I used to hate, then it's like, okay, I care less if anybody thinks about, what I say or, what I do. I'm just going to go out and be me. And if they can start to do that, it'll just naturally flow.
Awesome suggestion. So one of our attendees says that I find that parents are often in denial about their child having anxiety, and therefore maybe not addressing it yet or getting treatment. Can you recommend maybe an approach to like a parent who isn't aware that it's anxiety yet, or maybe not sure how to start addressing it?
Yeah, so these are the ones that break my heart, especially the few parents, and I hope it's few, that are just like, anxiety's not real, it's in your head type of thing. I don't know if that's exactly what you're saying, but I would say just I think education is the answer to it. I think that's pretty much the forefront of it, and realizing and really just learning about anxiety's purpose, which when I learned that opened so many doors in my mind. It was like, oh, okay. And it's to really just kind of understand it. And, like I said before, like maybe you don't have a very active, like socially anxious part, or, you didn't struggle with anxiety a lot yourself. So it's kind of hard to like, how do I go about helping my kid? They may or may not be feeling like this. But I think education is the first part of it, and those resources that we have out there, especially the ADAA one, where it really explains what social anxiety is, and if you can maybe see some similarities, and then from there you can see about going to a therapist or a doctor to maybe see what they think. It's good to always get a professional opinion. like I said in the beginning, like not here to diagnose, and I don't want you all to diagnose your teens either. So I think just education on it is the best thing. And I think the ADAA resource that we listed is really good if you take a look at that.
That is really, really great. And the Erica's Lighthouse resource that Kyle provided for us, there's a lot of nitty-gritty tips and conversation pointers in that handout too. So make sure you don't miss downloading that one when you have a chance as well. Okay, so someone said, great information, Kyle, and very timely to help me and one of my family members share with other parents. Thank you for your work, and thank you, Operation Parent. So that's awesome. And you know, that's something that we would love for you to share this webinar with others that might be struggling in any way, shape, or form, or just need some encouragement. Kyle is very positive and encouraging, and teens will respond so well to him. So this presentation is going to be up on our website tomorrow. So if you wanted to share it that way, that would be great. Or just, you know, letting other folks know about Kyle's work, about Operation Parent, if you could spread the word and share, because we really are in this to help as many people as we can. So I think I'm going to double check myself, but I think I've gotten through all of the questions. Nikki, if you happen to see one that I've missed, oh, I do see one, but if you see another one, Nikki, don't hesitate to let us know. Or Kyle, if you think of one that you get often as you present around the country, what are, someone's asking, and what are the different types of anxiety? So we've zeroed in on social anxiety today. I know a lot of folks have what's diagnosed as general anxiety. It can sometimes present as OCD or an eating disorder, which we're going to talk about both of those things a little bit in our next webinar. It's focused on general anxiety, but we do touch on eating disorders and OCD. But are there other types of anxiety?
I think social in general is like the main two. And I mean, I think there's like lots of like ones that kind of stem off general anxiety, like health anxiety, people feeling really anxious, you know, that they're not in good enough shape or not eating the right foods, where it's like totally, you know, anxiety is just kind of taking control at that point. But it's really just the feeling of, you know, feeling like you're being watched, like you're being judged, and like you're just not sure what to do. And I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, social anxiety is the feeling of being negatively judged in social situations. Anxiety is just that same thing, but not just in social situations, if that makes sense. So you can pretty much like tie that into like any really topic or category, because I mean, people feel anxious about all sorts of things, and maybe one type of thing, maybe public speaking in general, is I have public speaking anxiety or anxiety about that. Yeah, so I think that's the biggest difference.
Awesome. Here's the last question that I see in the queue. So would you have any advice for parents of younger kiddos, age 6 to 8, that might see like some anxiety type of behaviors starting up? You have some advice for parents of young ones?
Absolutely, because that is my wheelhouse, seeing how I have young ones. So I haven't actually experienced the teens yet. And the great thing about the young ones is it's kind of easier to get them integrated into some different practices. So for like all my kids, we all meditate in the morning for like 1 or 2 minutes, you know, something that they can handle. It's free meditations on YouTube that you can watch or listen to, and just making that just a daily practice to where that is a completely normal thing. And doing that consistently over time will be extremely helpful. I think about it all the time, like, because our kids all started meditating at like 4 years old. And I'm like, man, by the time they're 18, they're going to have so much meditation time under their belt. Like, their mindfulness will just be incredibly great. I mean, it's never going to be perfect. It's always a practice. But that's one thing that you can do. Also, doing gratitude, making that a part of the routine. Maybe when you all sit down for dinner before you start eating, what's 3 things everybody's grateful for? We try to do that as much as possible. I'm human, we forget sometimes, but that is extremely helpful and can also turn a little one's mood around like almost in an instant if you can get them to do it. So, because that's the power of gratitude. I mean, that's why I write down 5 things I'm grateful for every morning, because our brains are trained to go on like, what could go wrong? What is bad? And it's really just training your brain to be like, man, look at all I have to be grateful for right now. And I think those are 2 really good ones that we use all the time. That has been super helpful. Now, it's not the cure or anything. It's not gonna be perfect mental health by any means, but it's just a good practice for them at that young of an age, and really setting them up for success when it comes to mental health, especially as they grow older.
It's such a strong superpower too, because you can get yourself in that mode versus all the negative things that you might hear on the news or bad news, just overpowering what we hear culturally and we're bombarded with every day. Okay, so one of our viewers was reminding us that your teen could be experiencing panic disorder, some of very serious anxiety related things, agoraphobia, or there might be specific phobias or adjustment disorder. So thank you for taking the time to input that in the question section for us, so that folks could think and research those if you're concerned. And we have gotten to everything in the question section. We appreciate all of everyone's participation today. And Kyle, everything you put together for us was so helpful, right on point. And we look forward to seeing you all very soon on our next webinar. So take care, y'all. We'll see you in a little while.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle.